I wanted to do a different go on a bowl. I like the idea of a bowl being one color inside and dark the other. And the segment of bowls, whenever I do bottoms, they always end up kind of one piece, and the end grain, and it kind of turns a different color. And I know some people make the little wedges and put those in, and then they have the circle in the middle, and I've never really been happy with that either. So I thought it was a rainy day, Saturday, I would try something that I'd been playing with for a while. I took my little jig and I try to figure out the highest bowl or edge I could cut. So it ended up being about 2 inches I can still cut, and I had this maple and this chunk of walnut, and I thought, well, okay, we'll do a black and white bowl. So there we are. Measured them up, and just did some cross cutting here, and we're gonna cut some rips. I did 2 inches of maple and 2 inches of walnut because that's the biggest my saw could do with the jig. And I'm gonna glue them up. The maple will be the outside, the walnut will be the inside. Lots of clamps, clamp, clamp, clamp. And here I'm going to start making the base out of the walnut. It's going to end up being like a giant plug, if you will. My plan was to make a ring, hollow it out, make a walnut plug. So I'm going to find center, and I'm going to glue on a temporary waste block. What I like to do for these waste blocks, what I've always done, is I use a hole saw, and I'll just cut up chunks of wood from a skid with a 2-inch hole saw, and I'll just glue that on and then take it off afterwards. So I'm going to try to find center as best I can. The biggest problem I had with this project was trying to find exact center of everything. I'm doing like 4 layers, and was afraid I would end up with it being off center, so I was trying to be as meticulous as I could with my limited abilities. So anyway, I am through the dividers out here, kind of go with a rough outline of the circle because I was just going to lop the corners off on the bandsaw, which I did in a minute. So throw some glue on, clamp that up using my trusty 450-pound Craftsman clamps. These things are great. If you ever find them, buy them. They're great. So I'm going to glue that little tenon on there, temporary tenon, waste block, call it whatever you want, and it's all good. Clamps can come off. And this is pine from Home Depot, 1x10, $3 for 4 feet, 5 feet, whatever. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a temporary block, temporary top or temporary bottom. I haven't figured out which. It's going to be one or the other. And do the same process, mark the center, waste block, boom, boom. Make that clamp, put it on there. All right, so that little strip's done. Run it through the jointer a couple times, maybe 3 times. I only need to joint the one side. I took some time and wiggled with my jig here. This is where it all started coming up. Is I needed to do, I figured at least 16 segments to make the curve as round as possible. And in retrospect, I probably should have done more, and you'll see as it goes. Anyway, we finally goof around, get the jig set up right. I probably should do a better jig at some point. I also was struggling trying to get some settings right, and then I realized that my blade was not 90 degrees, and I kept forgetting that this saw, if you do rip cuts on a bevel with this old Craftsman saw, the tracks will fill up with sawdust, and the blade won't return back to 90 degrees. So I believe when I cut this one off, I realized that it was thinner on one end than the other when I checked it with the calipers. So everything came apart, cleaned the saw out, and away we go. I also realized that as I was doing this, I should have made 2 bowls and used a longer piece, because I ended up having to do reverse cuts because I needed all the interior angles to be the walnut and all the exterior angles. So I had to cut a little thin strip off to get my angle right to keep the orientation. Anyway, Of course, other people have different sleds, and that's not an issue, but that's the sled I have. So anyway, did a little whack little of those. You don't need to see those. Just kind of cruised through, made my little circle, played around with it a little bit. It fit pretty well. Generally, that jig I have, as long as you take your time and do it, set it up properly, it is fine. So, glue up a ring, clamp it up, smack it around, level it out best I can. And I should have paid more attention to getting an exact line with the maple or the walnut, and had that line in the center better than the line on the outside, and I should have shimmed them. Anyway, there it's sitting and hanging. I'll take my walnut bottom, round the corners off, throw it on the lathe, and I'm just going to square it up, true it up, and get a more or less exact size. One of the things I struggled with was I didn't know how big to make my little walnut plug here, because I didn't know how big my segmented ring was going to be. Anyway, sanded it, threw on some wax just to keep it for now, and I'm using a scraper here, I believe, and I'm just going to knock that 2-inch plug off. Like I said, I just cut them on the hole saw when I'm bored. They're very handy, and I'm going to true that up and set that aside. And that's kind of what it looks like. Pretty straightforward, just a walnut plug, solid piece of walnut. All right, cold jaws are mounted, and off comes the clamp for my ring. Sun's come out, it's a little nicer day today. And wiggling, and the ring is now mounted on the cold jaws. Gonna just square this face up. That's all I needed to do was square the face. So these jaws are not the best, but they do the job. So now I started trying to figure out I need to center that segmented ring on my temporary base. So I got the notion that I would just find the center of my little waste block, drill a hole right through, then use my caliper, or my whatever that thing is, and scratch a line, glue that on, and this is what it looks like. And at some point I will knock the corners off the pine once it's unclamped, and that's kind of what the plug's going to look like. It's going to go in there, and it should theoretically then be, the inside of the bowl will be completely black, well, brown in this case, and the outside of the bowl will be completely white with no base visible. That was my crazy notion. So I like to spin things and look at them for a little while, because that's what I do. And I'm going to go square up while it's mounted, and I'm going to start cutting my tenon for my jig. I just guessed here a little bit. Mounted it. You can see those little bits of lines in that walnut, which is why I should have done a better job lining them up. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's okay. I guess the whole project became a B+, but it was fun. It was fun to do. So I'm just going to mark out my tenon, try to get that as exact as possible. And cleaning up. I had to make sure it was square, and I checked my plug a couple different times too to make sure it was square as well, because I realized I should have made it perfectly square so it slid in the line. You'll see at the end there's a little glue line. It's at the bottom of the bowl. You can't see it inside because it's got such a sharp tenon. So I decided, instead of going on my own eye, I would actually use some math and make sure that it did fit, and ultimately it did. And then I had this waste block sitting here that I was going to cut off, so I thought, well, I'll just make this little swirly thing and see if I can hypnotize myself into doing something else on this beautiful day. But I didn't, so I made a little whirligig, and that's how it looks. Ooh, kind of cool, eh? Anyway, I'm going to glue the plug in now. We know it fits. Did some rough sanding. Don't know if I showed that. Here we go. Gluing it up, gluing it up, gluing it up. And in we go. 40 wax. Clean that off. And that's kind of where we are. I didn't think I needed to clamp it. It was in there pretty snug. And I'm going to obviously remove the glue. that's it. Looks like a funny Dutch oven. We'll see how it goes. I could do, I guess, multiple rings, but I really wanted to see how this was going to turn out. And we're just going to clean the bottom off, square it up, true it up. It had all fit pretty well, so there wasn't a lot to do. And I'm just going to maybe sand that a little and put some wax on it. I've been using candles lately when I don't know what I'm doing yet with the bowl, so I'll just put a little candle wax on and heat it up and let it smooth around, and it scrapes off easily enough. It makes an okay finish if you're just doing something, and heat it up with a little rag and it kind of liquefies and spreads all out. I haven't seen any downside to it. The intention was that the bottom of this bowl would never be food safe anyway. I don't know why anyone would want to put food in the bottom of the bowl, but I guess some people do. So there we are. That's how it is. I'm going to reverse the chuck now. I've got a tenon cut in the bottom of the bowl. You'll flip it over. We appear to be good to go now. And I'm going to start to remove this temporary top. I know it's a waste of wood, but it is crappy Home Depot pine, so there it is. So I just kind of dug through until I could see a dark line, and I knew I was getting close, and then I just ripped that off. And then I spent, another few minutes, obviously cleaning it up, truing it up, and making it kind of nice, I guess. I couldn't decide on the profile because it's always hard to decide on a profile, and I ended up just kind of with a round profile. You'll see later when the bowl's all done that you could actually go a lot deeper. It didn't need to be that thick. You could have done something neat with it. You could have dug all the way through the maple so that the walnut was exposed in a ring, or vice versa inside. And I could have rounded the top over so that the whole thing was a lot thinner. Like I said, it was an experiment. I really had this notion that I wanted a bowl that was two different colors inside and out. So a little bit of sanding, and I'm going to throw some finish on very quickly. It was just the oil, the linseed oil and shellac kind of process. It looks pretty good. It's shined up nice. I'm pretty happy with it. Oh, what I'm not happy with, which is why it's got a B+, is those lines. They're a little hexagonal looking. They don't quite meet perfectly the way I would have liked them, and that's on me. I should have taken more time to line them up. And maybe that there's a way to curve those better. If anyone knows a way, I'd be happy to figure that out. But the bottom looks nice. It's got a line in it, and the maple, it was heavily figured maple, and it turned out really well. So I'm just going to show you here with this pencil that I could have taken way more off the outside and let the maple come through. I could have squared it up. Maybe it would have looked a little more European. Could have dug through the walnut inside, and I also wondered if I got closer in the center when I joined the two rings, could I make that better? Anyway, thanks for watching.